Okay, so this is just a really quick video just to explain a little bit how the World Builder now works with libraries to do with textures and with models. So you'll see there's a few icons up the top. So we've got objects that we kind of knew before, and we've got gallery mode for textures and such forth. So first thing we want to do is it no longer loads objects by default, which means that you don't have to stick them in your media folder. You can specify models from anywhere on your hard drive and it will store a local copy. So if you go into object mode, you'll see it starts with a default cube primitive. If you want to change that, you can just go and hover over here and you'll see it'll say click to enter a model library. So I'm going to do that and it'll open up the library. Now here you can have up to 5,000 models. So you can see here it's telling you this is a stock cube, it's a primitive, but this one's empty. So I'm just going to click here and I'll get a nice little file browser will pop up here. So what I'm going to do is just quickly load in a model. So just bear with me 2 seconds. I'm just going to load up any old one. Right, so for this very simple test I'm going to load up the one that's called barn. So I'm going to double click that and boom. So instantaneously here I get a little thumbnail preview of my barn. Now there's a scroll bar at the side, so if you're loading up models you can kind of scroll through them that way, or you can use your mouse wheel to scroll up and down as well. Once a model's been loaded in, you can just left click to select that model and then it becomes the one that you're actively using. Now you can use the cycle bars to go through it and thereabouts, but once you start building up lots of models in your library you can just go into them and you can see them that way. Now when you right click on them you will get some options in the library here. So you can see here that the stock cube says its group is primitives. At the moment we're showing models from all categories. So what we can do is we can just right click on our barn there and hit set category, and then I'm going to say that is a building. So now you can see you've categorized that barn as a building. So what we can do, and as I say, is you can have up to 5,000 models, so it can get a little bit complicated to control and access them all. So you can just hit here categories and you can pick a filter. So I could say I just want to display my buildings, or I could say I just want to display my vehicles or primitives or whatever else you want, and they can be changed at any point in time. So I can go up here and reset that and say, well, it's a vehicle now, so if I go in and say vehicles I'll get that. Yeah, but for now I'm just going to reset it back to buildings. That is purely for a usability function. It has no bearing whatsoever in the actual world you build. But anyway, so now I've got my model loaded up and we've got it here, and everything else about this works as it previously did, with the exception of texturing, because at the moment we're now loading modules, we're not actually loading any textures with them by default. So I'm just going to place that down there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come out of object mode and I'm going to go into gallery mode. Now gallery mode works exactly on the face of it as model does, and again you can have up to 5,000 textures. You can use the scroll bar, your mouse wheel to cycle through all those ones, and you can see they're all empty. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click and I'm going to add an image. Now this time it's defaulted to open up image types, and you can see that in the same folder I've got one that says barn diff. Okay, so that's the diffuse texture for the barn. It's a simple mesh, it's only got the one texture. So I'm just going to double click on that one, and that image has now loaded in. So we can now see it's barn diffuse and a 1024 by 1024. Now it will automatically, wherever needed, to square off textures. So if you load in something that would say 1000 by 1000, it will resize it downwards to the nearest whole squared size, so it would make it, in this case, 512 by 512. So once I've loaded up that texture, I'm just going to come back out there, and now I've got those in, I'm going to go into object mode, I'm going to hit edit, and now I'm going to select my barn object, just as we did before, only this time I'm going to go down and hit texture. Now when I do that, you'll see that I now have access to, and again I can scroll bar around it, you've got access to the full image library that we loaded. So I'm just going to rotate this preview a bit till we get an angle that we like. Now all I've got to do here is then click on the object to set its texture. So you can imagine you could have loads of different textures there. So again, up here I can set the texture layer, so I can set it to any texture layer within the model that I want. If there's more than one mesh, the newest version, which I don't think I've made public yet, allows you to do multiple meshes. You can set the repeat and so forth like that. So in this model, all I'm going to do is in texture layer 1 on mesh 1, I'm just going to select that to set that as its texture. Oh, I've put it in the wrong texture layer, I put it in 1. I'm just going to set it to texture layer 0. And you can see it just comes up. Now at the moment that's all fine and well because it's on the default texture shader. On the newer versions, once you gain access to the normal and specular, it will then expect a diffuse, a normal and a specular, but they would all be loaded exactly the same way and then they'd be allocated exactly the same way. Once you've got that, if you've got a texture in there and you don't like it, you just click a blank space and it'll instantaneously get rid of it. So if I go back and set that model texture back to 0, Oh well, it should have deleted. This particular time it hasn't, but would normally have deleted. So once you've done that, just come out of that model viewer, and that is your object textured. Now the reason I've done that and set it by libraries is it allows you to go in here, and let's say for example you're going to set a texture that is this stone. It's a very basic texture, but let's just load up that stone texture there so we can see it's 256 by 256. I should also point out that there are options that you get here. So for example, at the moment the barn diffuse is 1024 by 1024, so I can go in and say I want to reset that image. It's using too much memory. Now I want it to be a 256 by 256 image. So that's it been resized, and if I come back out of there, you probably can't see much difference, but it's a much lower resolution texture which is using considerably less memory. It's really important when you start getting to 4K texture territory. So anyhow, in my gallery mode I've loaded up my rock texture, or my stone texture. So now what I'm going to do is go back to my object library, and I'm going to throw in a couple of stones. So I've got rock 1, and I've got rock, I don't know what happened to rock 2, but I've got rock 3, and I've got rock 4. So now I can come in here and I could place rock 1, rock 2, and rock 3, but I can now allocate them all the same texture. So I only have to have one instance of the texture loaded, but I can now freely texture as many different objects in the world as I wish with that texture. So there's an enormous memory saving potential to be had there, and all of this data now saves off with your world. So if I save this world, then the texture library, the object library, and everything assigned to it will all save off. And that is now, on the newest versions, how you control objects and textures.